There we go. All right. So what we're going to cover today is one, like, why do we even care about database health? Really, you're going to need database health. It should be maintained. Think of it like spring cleaning. Couple times a year, you just need to go through the reports that you need for licensing, maybe audits, your board reports, and make sure that the data that you guys have been entering all this time actually pulls out the way that you expect for it to. It's going to be for your accuracy in those reports. And then it's important to maintain your users. So your users, those people who have access to your system, making sure if anybody is no longer should have access, that you're disabling those, and just maintaining the user record is going to be important for the security of your system. And I think it's a part of your database health and a role that you have as a SAM administrator. We'll talk about where you have come from. So the different things that I will talk about as far as maintaining your database health, there is where did you come from and how does it look today and how can you figure out where there might be issues, and then where are we going to go? So I don't want to just like call out all the issues, but I want to actually help you think about fixing those things as you move forward. So we'll talk to those as well. And so let's see if this. So again, this is kind of like my image of representing where you are. A lot of times data, data just, you can tell because there's like glaring holes in your reports. Things are empty, values are empty. There could be a lot of misaligned information like text box fields where there's too many options and maybe a text box field is not actually an appropriate field type for that field. And then there could also be misalignment with your processes. So where you are, but where we're going is cleaning up the data. Future data entry, we're going to deal with how to get those specific pieces of data that have had challenges, make sure that that's on form so you can enter it correctly or change the field types if that's needed. And then auto actions, because who really wants to do data entry? Let's let Sam update some of the pieces of information for you. And so first things first is duplicate records is really a challenge in the system. And I've got this image here because we've got these duplicates. I also think it's funny because I know these women. When I lived in Georgia, if y'all heard that when I was talking to Dietz earlier, these double mint twins used to do yoga with me. So duplicate alerts, there are actual reports in SAM that already alert you. And if those reports for some reason are no longer existing, I'm going to show you how you can get that. And let's go talk about, go back a second. Is that going there? There we go. I'm going to click in. So I'm going to look here at this report. Every main entity record has a field on it called, let me look at this, duplicate alert. So it's on the main entity table, and there's a field called duplicate alert. If you filter a report by duplicate alert equals yes, it's going to generate all of the records that have this duplicate alert, which you can see if I open the record right at the top. Duplicate alerts connect you to the record that it feels is its suspect. I think if I click it, it just opens right there. So if I right click and open it, now I can see the two records. And I've got, we've got the same name. On both, Sam checks duplicate alerts by name, email, and phone number. And so it's going to look for those three pieces of information to see if any of your records have that same information. A couple things that you can do with this is either disable the alert, because really they just happenstance to have the same name or email. Email probably not, but phone number probably not. Those should be more unique. The thing with phone numbers is and emails is it connects, like if an organization record has the same phone number for different people that work in that organization, or the same email, that you might have a duplicate alert, but then that should be just disabled. Here, these people might very well be the same. You need to look and see, make sure contact information, kind of case information, what is the difference between the two? And then you can merge them if you feel like they're the same record. I'll talk briefly about merging. Merging is found under advanced options and merge record. This merge record functionality, you need to choose which main entity record you want to keep. So most of the time on your main entity table, that's like the family table, the child, the foster family, the birth mother table, the organization table, these highest level tables in the hierarchy. When you merge the two records together, you have to choose which one you want to keep. That information won't be smashed together. It's going to choose one or the other to keep it. Case information and any subtable under it, if it's a multi-record subtable, it will be combined. So in this situation, let me add a new case right here to this record so that we can see this. But this is a foster care, it's active, whatever. Just kind of adding, so that there's a case here on this family, and there's a case here on this family. And this is going to be, okay, respite provider family. If I merge the two together, I'm going to end up with one family and two cases. So let's see which family. This family was built after. It looks to have more contact, maybe more contact information, maybe not. I'm going to have to choose one. This one will go with this full address. So I am going to take this one and I'm going to advanced options and merge it into the other family. And so all of SAM records have an ID. You can see the ID. This is showing it right here. You can see it if I go back to a family record right here. Now your ID column may not, or ID field rather, may not be in this spot, but there is an ID on the record. Another way, just because you guys are SAM admins, and I'll talk to that again as well, is in the URL. FM is family, and you'll just kind of see those, but ID will always be there. Like this is the family case ID 199. This is the family ID 295, which matches this. Just so that you know and have a little bit more ease with what you're seeing on the screen, the URL will tell you as well. Okay, so 161 is the record that I am merging from, and I'm merging to the 295. If I press save, it is going to tell me I am merging from and deleting that 161 record. And I'm only going to end up with the 295. Now, when I do this, Sam, is it working? Sam is like done. It's going to let me know, like, supposedly that 161 record no longer exists. It really does in the background, but it takes my developer some effort to go in and do it. So if you merge and delete or delete records, you just need to make sure that you really want that gone, right? Sam tries to warn you a couple times for that. You end up with two cases. So now, just so you know, like any communications that come over, it should salvage those records, all the communication records, so you can feel somewhat confident with merging. And I don't know if that's a good phrase, like somewhat confident. You should be confident that when you merge records, the top entity, you're going to lose one, but all the subtable records and anything that comes underneath is really added together. So we have two cases here. If I toggle between, I get my respite provider case versus my foster care case. They are both case one, and the case number field is a field that exists on the case, and you can change that number. Where that field is anybody's guess. It actually exists on the case table. Sometimes it's on the case details form if you guys still have it. In my situation, I do. So I can overwrite it because both of them were case 1 on their respective records at the time. Now I've got a case 1 and a case 2. If I go back, I've got a case 1 and case 2. Okay. And so merging should happen. Let me jump back to my screen here. And you should also do a search. Okay. So just some of the things for future is just checking before you add new records into the system is just simple search. See if they exist in the system. And it looks like, do we still have to, or is Sam, look, it still pulls up the deleted record. So who knows, my master site might not be updated at this point, but apparently right now you can still find that deleted record, even though it's gone. So, okay, let's move on from there. Let's talk about other database health things. Maybe, does anybody have any question about duplicate alerts? Cool. Let's go back and share. The next thing you want to do is look at your process. So I don't know if any of you have really been on calls with me in the past, but your when I implement the SAM and talk you through implementing your process into SAM, we talk a lot about case stages and then dates that start and end each case stage. So you've got a kind of a chronology of your service with that client that can be categorized in big chunks, right? So inquiry when they're in their application stage, now they're in home study, then they're in matching, then they're in placement, and then the case is closed. Is typical, and that seems to fit for really adoption and foster care situations. It's in general. You may have different terminology for it, but generally that's the process. So when you're looking at your data, you want to think about, do your dates make sense with what the case stage says? Is it correlating to that part of, do your dates that are entered on a record, do they correlate properly to what the current case stage is? And then again, aligning it with your status. Let's see, if I go here, I really like this home study report for looking at that. Report stats are very, very helpful for it gives, and really for an executive level and other people, really everybody, it just aggregates the information so that you can see it in chunks. Case stage, though, is what I mean by aligning other things, your detailed information within your process. Case stages allow us to just see the data, again, in manageable bites, rather than every, there can be hundreds of dates and pieces of information or documentation that you're collecting during a part of a process, but if I can get it in a more manageable bite size, I can understand the information better. So, for instance, what I want to talk about here is like, if I look at, let's just look at home study application. So I've got a couple of records that are labeled in the home study stage as home study application, but I can see for sure 2 of them have home study completed date entered, which means that they're probably past this application stage. And that's what I mean by does it really align? If your team is doing data entry on statuses, that is a point in time where, I mean, you're now asking your team to do 2 data entry points for in the system, and your what do I want to say, if they're doing 2, just the likelihood that it's going to be exact is slimmer than if you at this point allowed SAM to do some of this data entry for you. For example, if we had an auto action that said when the home study is complete, I'm going to update the home study stage to complete or home study complete or whatever you wanted to label that. Does that part make sense? Yes, it does. Awesome. Gonna move on from this. Here I'm gonna jump back into it and talk about empty values. Empty values are a big red flag. And so what I had noticed when, and maybe you can see this here, is at the top, the way that I've got these report stats filtered is probably by the field counts by descending. So what records have the most values to them, and all of them at the top were all empty, and I'm like, oh, that's a huge red flag for an issue. If I jump back in here, you could see it literally, I even trimmed down, but across the board on all of this home study stuff, it's all empty. That's a real problem for the system, unless it's true. So really what you want to do is just go and validate. It might very well be accurate, but validating it would be important. Home study stage, if you set up process right, it is important, then you really shouldn't have any empty home study stages. So we could look here and kind of judge what's going on. There's a lot of records here that we don't really want to do all this cleanup on. So there's a couple of tools that Sam can help you with. Cleaning up the data is going to be bulk update, or in using the report, you can see that this turns, there's a little edit link, so you can literally go and say, well, you know what, that looks complete, so I'm going to go and set that record. There's a whole bunch that have home study completed date, so I could search by where I've got filter out empty values. So all these records that have values in them, I can actually clean them up and add the home study stage into them. Okay, I can clean it up again one by one, or using a bulk update under advanced options, I might bulk update these records. Bulk update is going to be every record that we see here on this report is going to get a brand new value for which we will determine what that value is. I'm going to update these and say the home study stage is going to be home study complete. Okay, it's going to give me, are you sure you want all of these records? I can confirm, and now it gives me no records because I had searched by what was empty. But home study complete, I'm starting to see a lot more completed fields here, right? All these records that have a home study completed date. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. We had an event and we generated 500 thank you letters, and we wanted to update the acknowledged date of acknowledgement field. Could we do this with the bulk update as well?
You can, for sure. That is an excellent example. As soon as you've done some kind of sending, right? So I don't know if that's Deets or not, but options, sending a bulk email. So these 37 records, I could say, hey, your home study is completed. Here's some information. And if you then also wanted to add a date field, you could totally choose to do that as well. Yep. If you were, let's look at this. So let's look at all these home studies are completed. Let's search where filter out entered values. So all of these records, these 17 or so home study records I have, it actually looks like I have 19 home study records where there's a home study completed date, even though some of them are empty for some reason. Maybe I searched by home study complete. And then a home study expiration date. So what I want to look at is this. Filter out blank values. So I'm going to go back to these 10. And look, all of these home studies don't have a home study expiration date. So I'm going to add a date field to this. With bulk update, I'm doing one at a time, but you can actually add multiple records at a time. But home study expiration date, and I could put in today's date. So the date of acknowledgement, you would just put in the current date or a specific date that you sent that if you were doing it later, right? Or tomorrow. Or there is this gear shift icon where you can go in and I could say, I want to set it from another field, and I'm going to set it from the home study completed date plus 1 year. Okay, so I have different options for what kind of dates field that I want to give it, if that makes sense. Like I can put the current date or a future date or a past date with this feature, with that gear icon. Is anybody new to this by chance? No? Go ahead. I can't really hear you if that was Dietz again.
A lot of this is new to me on the donor side of things.
You're very choppy. It sounds like it's new to you on the donor, and it should work the same for donor, volunteers, persons, any of the records. It should function the same across the board.
Okay.
Okay. If I filter out blank values here, so I get all the lists, and I'm just going to open this up, make sure I've got all completed dates. Here, I've still got some empty ones, so I think whatever I filtered on before, filter out entered values, I've still got a few more. So I'm going to go ahead and update to 1 year from now for all these. Just same thing, just so we see it again. Advanced home study expiration date is going to be set from another date. Sam's got a couple different ways in which it shows tables. So I think we've seen the two different ways. It'll either be a list or it'll be that choosing from the entire hierarchy. And a little bit you need to know where they are. I'm doing the expiration date no, it's from the completed date. I'm setting the expiration date as 1 year from the completed date. And so here, this was where it was the list versus when I chose here, when I had to select the table, it gave me the entire architecture under the family. I'm going to save these, and now I think all of our records where there is a home study completed date will also have a home study expiration date. In the future, I don't want you to have to do this bulk update. You can totally do it, it's fine. It's easy enough to do, but we can also make SAM do that itself. So auto actions are a great way to say, when the home study completed date is entered, I'm going to update the home study stage equals home study complete, and I'm going to update the home study expiration date to be 1 year or 2 years or whatever your rule is. Let me go back real quick to this and make sure I've got this. Does anybody have any questions about empty values by chance again? It will always tell you up here at the top, and really the goal is to have less empty values. If you've got a lot of empty, you could also look at that and say, do we need this field? That's a totally valid question. Just because we used to, or it was that way, doesn't mean you have to continue things in the future. So kind of looking at your data entry is like, don't collect data just to collect it. Collect it because it's useful. Because over collecting is really like, it makes people grumpy, right? And all of you, my assumption is SAM admins got the SAM admin role because you're maybe a little bit better at technology or a little bit more apt to say, I'll try it than other folks. That seems to be, I don't think Steve has joined the call today. I think he's at a conference, but Steve in Minneapolis, he has really gotten to love this role, but that he's a social worker by trade, and like administering a database is not what he signed up for, but he said yes to things and they gave him the role. So, and when I talk to people, it sounds like that's a common experience. So, so your role, in my opinion, is to start questioning, why are we doing this? Because you have to train users, and users don't want to do a lot of data entry. Okay, so look at empty values as like, just question, do we really need this? SAM comes with fields by default. If it was too many for your team, I am not opposed to you disabling them. You don't have to keep what's there. What's there is just to be an offering of suggestion for you. Okay? Any other thoughts on this that anybody wants to talk about? By chance. I'm not even sure how many folks. We had a couple folks on, a couple different people on. Anyways, I'm going to let that part go. Let's see. So we talked about bulk update. I want you to think, we talked about categories. So categories, I think of them as a lot of times programs, case stages, demographics. You might have things like time ranges or income ranges and age ranges. Those kind of things are important to do and to use either bulk update or auto actions to help you set, because looking at every date is not going to be super effective. That's triggering me into something else. Let's look at dates as report stats to help you out. So we talked about bulk update. I'm going to drop one of these, or let's just add a new one. So I want to talk about home study completed date and ways that you can use report stats to help you with looking at ranges of data time-wise. So these are when the home studies are completed. If I choose a date field, my report stats allow me different date options. So I can look at it by year and month, by year and quarter, by month and quarter. And so depending on what's the purpose of your report or what type of information you're looking at, setting things even by just quarters could be really helpful, even if it's year over year, is to see, like for me, when do I do a lot of demos of SAM? You guys might look at that as trends in when families are inquiring about your site, because then maybe you need to get your name out into whatever avenues you choose to talk about your organization, but do it the quarter before, right? Something like that, just to be more proactive. Let's look at it by year and see what it gives us. When I'm setting it up a report stat, I've got different types of stats that I can talk about. So I can do it based simply on record count, which is how many records fit that specific year. In this case, it'll be on the year. And then I can certainly add the percentage. Then I have choices if they exist, and I'm not sure for home study what I would choose, but if I did a total, it'll give me some other fields. Let me see, like home study update number. See, this doesn't really make sense. I don't think I've got anything in totals. These sections here are good for aggregating like costs or mileage, scores. Sometimes would be helpful here if there was like assessment scores, so that you could pull like the minimum and maximum or the average score that people are getting in a specific year. So then you could almost look program over program, year over year, what are scores changing or not. Then you can choose how you want to order it. Do I want to order it by the field titles? So 2018 to 2017 to 2016, or am I going to look at it by record count? And I'll toggle between the two so that you can see the difference. I usually set things by field record count and descending, because I like to see what are we doing the most of. But sometimes, especially in dates, that doesn't necessarily make sense. So sometimes setting it by the field title will make more sense. But we'll go and look at this, and then we can make a judgment call. So if I scroll over to the side, here again, I've got a lot of empty, which in this case, we're talking about every single home study. So this tells me that I'm potentially working on 93 home studies. I've got 93 home studies that are opened but haven't been completed. That could mean a couple of things, but we're going to go with that. My data is so old that when, I don't know, Sam was conceived in 2007, 2008, we were doing a lot of data entry. And that's why I've got a lot of 2008 and 2010 here, right? It's just older information. You can see my counts. There's a lot of dates in here at this point. So that's somewhat helpful, somewhat not, but pulls all that together. And certainly, I don't know if you guys know this, but if I filter on 2008, I am getting those number of records. Here they all are, the home study completed date. All of these values are in 2008. Okay, so the couple different ways that you can use report stats, they're hugely helpful for you. And then again, we could always look at the empty ones and make sure, do we have anywhere the home study stage, if I was to search by this field where it's home study complete? And I've got some, so I've got a misalignment with my process. So either I need to go into these records and review the home study record and enter that date, or maybe my case stage is wrong. And that I don't really know right now without a deeper dive. I feel like I've given you 20 concepts all right in there. Does anybody have any questions about report stats and date filters at all, as far as aggregating that? Cool. I'm going to change this over here to the field title. And so I'll look at the most recent. Okay, and so it kind of changes the way that I see things. I see things empty down at the bottom now. Let's go back. Other things. The expirations we talked about is doing bulk updates. And at this point, I don't think that's going to give it to me, the outliers. Outliers are things that are fitting outside the norm. I think I had another report where my date was like, there was a 1996 date. And so looking at things, when all my dates are kind of between the span of 2007 and 2018, seeing something in 1996 is an obvious outlier that then I need to go and check for that. Okay. I'm getting towards the end of my slide presentation, so I'm going to continue talking a little bit about cleanup here. I want to talk about these case stages. So I've got 2 case stages here, or 3 really, that all seem very similar. And so ways that you can not only, we talked about merging records, but your lists are also types of records in the system. So I'm looking at specifically this one that says completed. We've got home study approved, and we've got home study complete. It all sounds a lot alike to me. I mean, home study approved may or may not be, but for the sake of this, let's say that they are, and let's clean that up. I'm not 100% sure at today, right now, if we might have an issue with the merging lists. I kind of think we do, where it sets, like if I did home study approved value, I think it will actually set it to null or something like that. It's weird. We can actually try it. Home study complete and home study stage equals. So you can use bulk update is what I want to say. Home study complete. Just because I'm here, I'm going to talk about the 2 different kinds of filters. There's matching all. And if I set the report like this right now, I would get no results because this particular field can only have one value. So it can never be home study approved, home study complete, and completed. So I will always get 0 in this situation. But if I change it to or, now I've got, if it's in approved or incomplete or home study complete, then all of these records will show. Okay, so this little toggle here allows you to, as an admin and as a report builder, you need to think about, am I looking at and or am I looking at or? Okay, Hannah's got a question. And so let me finish this and then I'll address the expiration question. So these 3 items here, completed, home study approved, and complete. I've got 48 records, and let's just say that they're all we feel like they're all the same. All these case stages mean home study complete. That's the one that we're going to keep. Couple of things that you can do with updating this, just for the sake, and you guys bear with me if we find a bug. I'm going to show you the list merge feature. If it works, great. If it doesn't, great. This is sample data. And so you won't go do this in your site today. You'll use bulk update instead, okay? So let's go to the list merge. So every one of these columns opens up with options to either sort and filter the report, or you can also access the field properties screen. This is a hugely important screen. As a SAM admin, it tells you about how this field is used throughout your database. It tells me at the top the field title, which I could change and adjust that here. The table that this is on, so I could access that. This is a link. The type of field it is, and I could change this field from a list to a text box, let's say. I wouldn't recommend that in this situation, but you could. And then what list is it using? I can add hints to this field that will help your users. So talking about user management, should add this on too. Hints, the field hint will be something that is relayed to your team internally. The field setup memo is just for admins. So it is here on this screen only, but it'll help you remember why in the world are you using this field. Field stats, how many out of how many records is there an entry for? So we already know there's a lot of empty values, so this kind of makes sense, but we're still using about half of our records have this field value. We really want to maintain this record. It's an important record to our system, or at least that hints at this, okay, at this point. Field titles that we've got, a lot of home study complete, okay, whether or not that's helpful to you or not. Modification history. All of this are from, it tells me when I've done a bulk update that I did this bulk update to all these records and what the value I said it was. I can see a full modification history here. The parts that I use, like if you are ever to ask for support from me or my team, one of the first things we do is look at the field property screen because we want to know what forms that this is used on. So where can I find this form? How do I know what type of data entry? How do your users interact with this form? Because your users are always interacting on a form. Typically, you can also interact through a report. Okay, but a lot of times users are using fewer reports and more forms because they're doing data entry. And so where are they accessing it? What reports it's used on? These are all links, by the way. Oops, that gets me to that report that I could find that field. What auto actions it's used on, what checklists and what templates. Throughout the system, every single field has this field properties screen behind it that helps you understand how it's used in the database. This is huge. This is huge, huge important. There's also field properties. If it looks like this one, this is a really old field, so that it doesn't tell you who did it, when did they do it really. New fields that you've added since, or at whenever there was some point in time when this field property screen came into existence, fields going forward created after that point in time tell you who did it and when. And so you'll see a lot are built from me or maybe from Dimitri, but you'll also see users who are people in your organization if they were building things. Going back to this. So my main point what I was doing was going to update the home study stage, merging the records. So this is the actual list under advanced options. I've got an option to merge list items. And so what I'm going to merge from, this is very similar to the original duplicate. What I'm merging from is I'm going to delete. And this warning sign tells you, okay, the merge from list item to use the merge to, and then delete the merge from list item. So I'm just going to say home study approved is going to go into home study complete. Okay, but you do want to make sure that the merge from is the one that's going to be deleted. Merge from is confirming. I'll say I want to do that. So now in my list, home study approved doesn't exist. I'm going to go here to this report and just refresh it. And I've got now, it actually did it. So it works. It works, thank goodness. At some point in time, it didn't work, and now it works again. I've got all the records are now home study complete. So I could really use that same option and take home study are completed and make it home study complete. So then we'll end up with 55 records that are home study complete, or I'm going to go here and do the bulk update. So options, advanced options, bulk update, and I'm going to set that home study stage equals home study complete. Okay, those 6 records. Now that I no longer have the complete, I no longer have home study approved. However, if I am on a record, let me just go into this record here, and I go to this home study, on the home study stage isn't on this form, it's right here. I do still have completed as an option. So if I do a bulk update, that doesn't eliminate that option in the list like when we did the list merge does. Okay, so there's 2 different options for you depending on your needs. View field properties I can access here. I can go back to that stage, and here now I could delete items and I could delete the completed stage. Sam always likes to do this. Are you sure when you delete? Because delete is really like gone. Everything's kind of a soft delete, but it's gone from you. You can't really get it back without going through a support request. Any questions about list merging? Because that I find there's a lot, you know, there can be too many lists also, list items. A good rule of thumb for list items is 5 to 13. There's this really awesome TED Talks that we reference, and it's called How to Make Toast. I can't remember the doctor's name who puts it on, but he talks about the number of records that our brains really can't, like if you're talking about process and you're asked to describe how do I make toast, the number of steps that people typically recall are between 5 and 13, and that is a good number to keep your list stages at as well, okay? Because the list stage is that big, like, I pull the toast out of the refrigerator, I put it in the toaster, I push the toaster down, I pick it up, and I spread butter on it, right? And so there are a certain number of stages that help you just understand how to do something. Home study stage, I love this one in particular because home study is one part of your greater process for servicing your clients. You have lots of processes that are a little bit bigger, or let's say we call them nested processes. You'll see that in our support help and in our discussion is it's like a Matryoshka doll. It is a process that we do the home study, but the home study actually has multiple steps in order to complete it, okay? And that you can have kind of leveled in stages. Let's see, other things here. Does anybody, let me go back to her question. Hannah's question, where is that? In the chat. When we add in a home study, the notification does not go away. Do we need to delete their alerts, or is there something we can do to make it go away? I can see me. When we add in an updated home study. Okay, so I think Hannah, and maybe you can unmute yourself and actually talk me through it, is I'm thinking you have a report or probably an auto action that is automatically sending out an email to remind families, hey, you've got this home study that's about to expire. Is that correct? Something like that is typically what happens is you'll need to either use the home study current table. She says, yes, it is. Or the auto action needs a new, and it may need a new filter on the auto action that you're pulling the home study current table. So if you're using home studies properly, you've got one home study record, and then you've got another a home study record for the updated. Typically your home study records, let me get to the table. So I'm going to go search for the, nope, not search for the field properties screen, field properties, and I'm going to go to the table. Because this is a multi-record table or we call them nested processes too, where your things that are going to be done repeatedly, you can have a current version of it. So it takes it from being a multi-record to the latest one, a single record. And a lot of times your auto actions might need to be set off that current one, because then it excludes all the other ones that are in the history, because we're no longer looking at that. And that's probably what will fix that situation. Under advanced options, really advanced options, there is, mine home study record is already set as the view the current latest record. And typically that current latest record has this big box that's like, this is a sibling table as the current latest record for the original home study table. Let me go back to this. Adoption referral doesn't have a current latest record. So where a table doesn't have it, I can go to advanced options, really advanced options, and set up a sibling table for the current latest. If I do this, now this exists, and what I want to tell it is what makes this the current latest. Typically, it's going to be on a date field. Dates are super important. It just helps put things in chronological order. And so I can choose, it's typically going to be, I like to put things on the start date. When did I initiate this? That makes it the reason for having the new record is because I'm initiating something new. So when home study is a good example of this also, is I am going to tell a family that they need to do, their home study is expiring. And really, Hannah, I might change the process for you altogether. Instead of telling a family that their home study is expiring, say your home study is expiring, and so we're starting a new process. So we've inserted a new home study record, and now we're actually just going to send you a welcome, almost like a welcome letter. Welcome to your next home study. Here's what we need for this one. So instead of going so much to the back, have Sam automate inserting a new home study record, which starts a new process again. Does that make sense, you guys? It's a little bit, I think, tricky to understand, to see, but instead of being reactive that we're about to expire, tell Sam to automate the inserting of a new home study. And when that new home study is inserted, we're going to go ahead and send, hey, your previous home study is about to expire, so here's the new information. Does that make sense, Hannah? This will allow us to put as, yes, I don't know if y'all can see the little help or her contact over there. Cool, you're welcome. So setting things descending is the best, now I want the most current record is the descending versus ascending in this case would be the oldest. That's how you set it up. Using the aggregate fields option on report sets. Anytime I've tried to use it, challenge because I don't really know what it's telling us. Okay, so David, is this David from All God's Children? I'm thinking so. And can you give me like an example of an aggregate field? Let me think. So I like aggregate fields for categories, and I like them for dates. So we talked about like the home study completed date. I would do it for home study expiring dates. So going back, let's talk about Hannah's home study expiration date. I'm going to add a new one. This is the only problem with these report stats is they've got a specific margin in between, and so it starts spreading it out. What are you going to do? Everything can't be everything. So that's what it is. I'm going to use this home study expiration date for this home study. And so again, I've got different types of options for dates than I get if I was to choose home study agency. I don't even get that date option. So I like things for who's doing, the aggregate date. This is what you're wanting, isn't it, David? Yes. Okay. So let's talk about it for cost. So maybe there's a mileage on home studies, right? Like you guys go for visit 1 or visit 2, you might count your mileage. let's just add a brand new field and then we'll do it right from that. Home study, I'm gonna go to this Pete again, the home study record. And from here, I'm gonna add a new field and call it mileage. Right, because you'll think about things that you want to count is really what aggregates are for, I think. I don't think that I do it on any kind of date. I think it's really going to be on number, currency fields. That's going to make the most sense. I'll use decimal points for mileage. Okay, so now every record has a mileage field. Okay, it's going to show up right here for now. So I can put in, I did 25 miles. And we could certainly, for mileage, have for home visit 1, home visit 2, whatever. You can have a home study fee here. That might be AR fees. If you're using that, and SAM is probably the best place to get a lot of aggregate data. But mileage, time for communication, the time it took from between start and end, you could count that up. Trying to think if these need to be set as counting fields. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Field properties screen, advanced options, and then there's really advanced field properties. There's an option. We'll be changing this layout soon for you to make it easier. But where is show field totals on forms and reports? It's always set by default to no. Number fields, timeline fields, like the length of days in between certain things, that'll be helpful too. Set those to yes. Only administrators can do that. So setting those to yes will allow it on forms and reports to auto-calculate the total. Again, I'm not really sure that that needs to be in place for aggregates, but you could add that just as a safeguard. I'm going to now add a field and put mileage on here so that we can see it, and I can add a couple other ones to get us more totals. Put in 15, and let's put in 45. Okay, so I start to get some value to this. Now if I did add new, and I looked at the home study, this is where I could say, let's do it like this. On my home study worker, I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to go to total, and now I'm going to pull the home study mileage. So how many miles has each home study worker done? That's what it's telling me. And then I can order this by, let's do it by field title here, or actually let's do it by aggregate field descending. So again, we can see how many records. So most of the home study workers, because I only entered 3, are on empty people, but I did get somebody, Lisa's done 15 miles for 5 home study records. That's probably not accurate, but if I clicked on Lisa now I've got these mileage, and I can put, she drove 60 miles, she drove, and I can do a cleanup based on this. Does that make sense? And I'll show you, like, if I do average, 37 miles, okay? So now we start to get, Lisa's actually done a lot of mileage. If I add in here, edit settings, the average, or the totals by percent. So totals percent, this is out of all the mileage that's been entered, Lisa's done 68% of that mileage. That's not that helpful for this. Average might be helpful because out of 5 records, or out of 5 home study visits that she's done, she on average drives 29 miles. That might be helpful information to see, oh, these social workers are going really far out, or, you know, regionally, if some of your clients are outliers from your general region, you might need to charge more for those, something like that. Those are all choices you can make. Is that helpful, David? Yes, good. Okay. Cha-ching, that this is a helpful meeting. Let's see. I think a lot of these report stats like that are good for people. I would look at, somebody just did, they've got a jurisdiction. So thinking about regions, instead of hitting like, if you work in the entire state, maybe you don't need to have every county listed. County might be important if for some things, but looking at things regionally will also be helpful. And you might have a way of retrieving the some aggregates for regional things, but I think about those as like between a text box and a list. Somebody had a field called jurisdiction, and they've got it as a text box. But when I asked them and kind of posed some questions about it, there's typically 13 jurisdictions that their agency is responsible for. That's in that number that makes that, instead of a text box, that it should be a list. Because again, when you think between text box and lists are very specific options that your users can enter. Or Sam can say it's going to be this based on some other data entry point that you put in. Text boxes open up the ability for misspellings. You can see it a lot if people put counties in. There's misspelling for that. Even cities. Cities, though, you probably want to allow that. And cities are things that you might need to clean up just so that your records can be better. Let me see. We're coming to a close. My outside of, I got to let him go. User management. I don't know if you guys know that the Security Center exists, but as a full admin, part of your role with administering SAM is managing your users. The Security Center can be found under settings or also from the homepage. It gives me a list of all users with enabled logins. This is going to be really important for the security of your data and for maintaining your account with Inreach Solutions. So check if any of these people should no longer work here or no longer have access to your site. You really need to remove their access. So for example, Arnold has never even logged in. I need to go over to his record and I need to go edit login and permissions and disable that login. He's never even logged in all this time. It's just not good to have extra people out there. These people haven't logged in since 2013. This guy's just got to go, right? So over and over again, it's a quick and easy thing, but it is super important for your security that you just don't have any laggards out there. Let's see, is there anything else in Security Center that I want to talk about? Permission types, you can see what permission type they have. As far as talking about data entry too, or support requests that your users may have, a lot of agencies, they filter support requests through their SAM admin. So instead of having everybody on their team just clicking support and contacting us immediately, they go through the SAM admin first. And which is great. One of the things that we always do is like, just what browser are you using? SAM is collecting that information, so it will help you kind of tailor things. I know right now somebody could not use an add form for some reason from Safari. I've only heard it from one agency. Not sure why, but that's out there. And so it was a browser-specific type. Google Chrome seems to work really well. It's kind of, I was just reading this article yesterday. It's like 78% of all users use Google Chrome anyways. It's a really good one because it maintains the standards of the World Wide Web, which some of the other ones don't as much. Why, I don't know, but it's a good, consistent one. We can also see, like, when Ildiko logged in, whenever 2017, last year, she logged in, she was on this browser version of Chrome. And so getting people to have their systems updated, because SAM should work with the latest version, is also helpful information that you can know. Other things that are here are modification history, activity tracking, which apparently we're going to have another call to discuss those because we're reaching the end of this time. But those are ways that you can figure out what modifications are made, who's going to what within your system, and you can kind of play with that, but those have access here. Are there any kind of last minute questions about database health? If not, I would recommend that you review your database a couple times a year. I want you to really look at the reports that you guys are most frequently accessing. That being said, get rid of reports that you're not frequently accessing because more is not more. More can be less sometimes, and less is more, actually. In my opinion, I like keeping it simple. I think it just is easier to use for all users and to be able to report reports when you have a little bit less, but the quality is there. Think about the needs that you have for licensing, audit, your board. Those are good reports to go to just, check on a health check, right? Check on your users. Users should really be done, like, certainly as soon as somebody leaves the company or leaves the organization, but giving it a good check, thorough check twice a year is a good thing. Tidy up, look for empty values, look for outliers, and make sure that you align with your process. And then making process changes. We didn't even talk about auto actions really, except that you should do auto actions. I think Sarah's had a couple of webinars on building auto actions, so there will be more of those to come because it's a part of the system that you guys, I'm saying in general, we build a lot on. We do that for agencies, do that setup. So we'll always kind of work to make those easier for you, but auto actions, think about if your team doesn't have to do a data entry, that's great. Think about for auto actions, updating statuses, updating responsible workers, sending emails. Those are the big things for auto actions, but I'm thinking more today as like updating values, updating expiration dates, updating upcoming due dates. Those kind of things, let Sam do that for you. Don't get out your calendar and don't have to have multiple data entry points. Look to your forms. We didn't even get into it a ton, but checking out your forms. So if you've got a lot of values that are empty, make sure that your users can see them on your forms. Or if there are specific pieces that just aren't being entered correctly, again, it's an auto action doing it, or making sure it's a required field on a form, or that it's at minimum accessible for your team to see it. And that's what I have for you today. Are there any like kind of last minute questions or anything that you want to discuss? Nobody's chiming in. Hopefully everybody's still there. Other things to know, if you guys have suggestions for webinars that you'd like to see in the future, definitely send that to us through support or I think there's that new SAM admin portal. I believe it has a feedback form. Send it to us there. Let us know what you want to know about and look for the next one. I don't know for sure if it's been scheduled, but it's typically a month from now. So sometime in September, we'll do something else. If you want more database health, let us know. And have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye. Let me see if anybody. See ya. All right. Bye-bye, guys.